Today we're going to be talking about thickening agents. We're going to talk mostly about the Power of Roux, and then we're going to talk about other common thickening agents that you will be using in the class. We have three classical types of roux that we use in the kitchen. White roux, which is roux blanc, blonde roux, which is roux blonde, and brown roux, which is roux brun. What roux is it's equal proportions of fat and flour by weight. So if you use 4 ounces of flour, you use 4 ounces of fat. The most commonly used fat is clarified butter. We clarify the butter so that we can remove the impurities and so that the impurities don't cause the flour to caramelize faster than you would want your roux to caramelize. When you clarify your butter, you melt down the butter over low heat. You're going to be skimming the top of the surface to remove all the white particles, which is the foam that you can see in the picture there. And then when it's completely melted, you will either pour or ladle the yellow butter fat part out of the pan into another container. Another way to take care of this is to skim the foam off the top, let your butter cool down in the refrigerator completely, and then the butter fat will solidify, and the whey, which is in the bottom, you can either poke a hole in the bottom down through your butter fat and put the whey out through it into the garbage can, or you can take the butter fat, because it's going to be solid chunks, out of the pan and leave the whey left in the bottom. You discard the foam and the whey, and you're going to use just the pure yellow butter fat that's in the middle. Here we prepared a white roux, which is used for preparing light-colored soups and sauces and gravies. Sauce bechamel is the mother sauce that is made from white roux and milk, which we will prepare in lab. Blonde roux is cooked a little bit longer to begin caramelizing the proteins in the flour. It's used for preparing light-colored soups and sauces such as velouté, which is a mother sauce we will be preparing, made by adding blonde roux to fish stock or chicken stock. Brown roux is cooked longer to toast the flour and create a robust nutty flavor. Brown roux and dark brown roux are used a lot in Cajun Creole cooking to prepare gumbos and soups. Brown roux is used to prepare sauce espagnole, a mother sauce which is made from brown stock and brown roux. And then the dark brown roux is used mostly in the Cajun Creole cooking. It's not used in all other ethnicities, so that's why we don't always consider it one of the roux as far as talking classical roux. How to use a roux? The longer you cook a roux, the less the thickening power it has. So a darker roux is used more or less for the flavor that it adds to the sauce or the soup than the thickening power. When you're adding a roux to the liquid or vice versa, you must whisk vigorously so that you can prevent any lumping. There are specific techniques that we use for using roux to prevent lumpy sauces, gravies, and soups. You must remember the hot and cold rule. You can add cold roux at room temperature or cooler to hot liquid, or you can add a cold liquid at room temperature or colder to a hot roux. You can never add cold roux to cold liquid or hot roux to hot liquid, because you will end up with a lumpy final product. When you're asking how much roux should you use to thicken something, it depends on the consistency that you want for your final product. You can remember the 3, 4, 5, 6 rule. 3 ounces of roux per quart of liquid will thicken a sauce to thin or light consistency. 4 ounces of roux per quart will give you a medium-bodied sauce. 5 ounces of roux per quart will give you a thick sauce, and 6 ounces of roux per quart will give you a heavy gravy. If you look on the right-hand side, you can see the different mother sauces that we are discussing and the additional ones that we will also be preparing in class. Next, we're going to discuss slurries, which are also known as whitewashes. We are going to talk about the difference between cornstarch and flour slurries. Cornstarch has twice the thickening power of flour, a much more neutral flavor, and it creates a very smooth, glossy sauce. Flour can create a more cloudy sauce, so if you're looking for something that's smooth and glossy, you want to use cornstarch if you're looking for something to not change the overall color of your sauce. When you're using flour or cornstarch, you must add them to a cold liquid and whisk them in to prevent lumping. You cannot use them with warm or hot liquids. You then take this cold liquid that has your cornstarch or flour mixed in it, and you will whisk it into your boiling liquid and thicken it to the desired consistency. You need to make sure, especially when using flour, that you simmer the liquid long enough to cook the raw starch taste out of the flour. Other thickening agents that we will be using in the kitchen, a liaison is a mixture of heavy cream and eggs that are tempered into a sauce, most commonly used for pasta dishes. When you temper a product, you are taking the egg yolk and the heavy cream that is mixed together for your liaison, taking some of the hot sauce and pouring it into the egg mixture slowly while you bring up that temperature of the eggs. If you take your egg mixture and dump it directly into your hot sauce, you're going to scramble your eggs and end up with scrambled eggs mixed in with sauce. So you need to make sure you're tempering your eggs. Beurre Marnier is just a raw version of roux. It's also known as lazy man's roux because you're just taking melted butter and or even just room temperature butter, mixing it in with the flour, and then you can fleck it in with the simmering sauces when you finish them. The reason I don't use this much is because you fleck it into your pan and then it takes longer to cook your sauce because your starch hasn't been cooked out of it at all. When you're preparing roux, you've actually begun to cook the starch out of the flour while you're preparing your roux. Arrowroot is used, it has the same thickening power as cornstarch, but a milder flavor than cornstarch. But a lot of people won't use it because it is so much more expensive than cornstarch is. Farine is the process of dusting your product. So you can have a chicken breast or beef chunks for a stew that you flour before you saute them. After you saute them, you'll see that there's little bits and pieces that are stuck to your pan and some of it's still on the meat. What's stuck to the bottom of the pan is known as fond, F-O-N-D, and that's flavor and thickening power right there in your pan. So then you will deglaze your pan with white wine or red wine or your stocks or whatever liquids you choose to use, and then you can create a pan sauce using that to thicken your sauce. Panade is bread and liquid mixed together to bind meatballs, meatloaf, all different kinds of things. You can also use them to thicken soups or sauces. If you use them to thicken soup or sauces, though, what you want to do is make sure you either puree or strain to make sure that there's no chunks of the bread left in it that you can see because it's not very desirable. A new up and coming trend is food grade gums. They have extremely neutral flavors, and a lot of people are using them because it takes a very small amount to result in a sauce that's not altered in color or flavor at all because it's such a small amount that's needed in comparison to the other thickening agents that we might use. Here I gave you a couple resources that will assist you in completing your homework assignments and get you ready for lab. Escoffier at Home has wonderful resources about the basics of culinary. Chef John Folson Company has a lot to do with Cajun Creole cooking and has all different kinds of recipes for roux and different recipes that would use the roux in them. And Stella Culinary is a great resource because he really goes into the scientific background of how things work. So you can use those resources to help you with your homework assignments for this course.